Hey guys, if you're listening to this episode, please note that this original recording and released under the Balance Boss Mom podcast. The podcast has since evolved and is now called The Balance with Erica B. This is a previously recorded conversation that I believe is truly worth hearing, listening, and seeing. Please disregard the introduction where I reference to the Balance Boss Mom podcast, as this episode was created before the rebrand. Again, guys, I want to thank you for continuing this journey with me, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Bye, guys. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Balance Boss Mom podcast, where we talk about building a life, business, and that feels aligned, sustainable, and balanced. Today's episode is one I know will resonate deeply with so many of you. If you ever felt frustrated, defeated, or completely exhausted by your weight loss journey, because today we're exploring a perspective of both refreshing and incredible liberating. So what keeps you broken? What keeps the healthy balance of eating? When it comes to healthy balancing of eating, for me, I've struggled with it throughout my high school career. So what is something that we could start off with, Shirley? And I do want to welcome you to the Balance Boss Mom podcast, because yesterday's conversation was so compassionate, eye-opening, and honest, and a breath of fresh air for me. So I want to welcome you onto the podcast. Explain a little bit about your background here with the listeners that don't know you and don't understand what healthy eating boundaries are.
Great to be here, Erica. And yes, we had a great conversation yesterday. And for me, the way it started was exactly kind of how you started. I was frustrated with my weight in high school. I wasn't that much overweight, maybe 15, 20 pounds. But basically, I thought, okay, if I lose the weight, it should be done. It should be over. I should not have any frustration with it anymore. But it didn't follow the same path as achievement. It's like when I did my schoolwork, if I got an A, then I was done with it and I moved on. With eating, I couldn't move on. I still had this internal angst that I thought, what is this? And those thoughts would come up. Is this weight going to stay off? If it starts climbing, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to keep it off? What if my size changes? What is this angst all about? And that was the beginning of my journey.
Wow, that's exciting. So, was it something what piqued your interest in, or your professional at first with weight loss?
Okay, as I figured out about this angst, I thought, okay, it's going to leave me when I go to college. It followed me into college. My undergraduate and graduate degrees at the University of Minnesota, it didn't resolve any of my angst. And when I went into teaching, I realized, wow, I'm not the only one with this angst. I listened to my students. These girls were frustrated with their weight. It was destroying their lives. They were constantly thinking about it. And they were constantly beating themselves up about what they were eating, what they were not eating. They didn't love living in their body. And I thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to get this issue resolved once and for all. And at the time, I thought, okay, I'll just do a PhD and get just more education. But in the 70s, I couldn't crisscross fields. And I knew it wasn't just one area. It wasn't just fitness. I thought it's not just nutrition. It's not just psychology. But at that time, I couldn't crisscross. Now you can. But that was a real tipping point, because then I thought, okay, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. And so that was huge, because the answer wasn't in the books. It just wasn't there. And the first time I heard the word hunger, I thought, okay, that makes sense, because that would be the start of an eating boundary. And when I would watch my husband, he would eat, and he'd say, oh, I'm hungry, I'd eat. And then when he was done, he would just walk away from that table without another thought. I said, aren't you thinking about it? Aren't you worried about, okay, did I eat enough? Did I eat too much? Did I eat the right thing? He said, why would I think that? I am done eating. That was another tipping point for me, because I thought, okay, it's not supposed to be in our heads churning constantly. Once you eat and the hunger's been satisfied, you're done. And then the real awareness came, the birth of our daughter. And I watched her tell me very clearly when she was hungry. And what was also amazing was she told me very clearly when she was no longer hungry. And this is what we talked about yesterday, Erica, where
Mm-hmm.
they push it away, they spit it out. They don't care what degree you have. They don't care how much nutrition they've had. They don't care
Mm-hmm.
about the amounts, and they could care less about their diaper size. They
Yep.
just want to stop eating. I went, bingo. We were born with these eating boundaries. In addition to the fact that in between that start and stop, I
Mm-hmm.
could tell if she liked it, if she didn't like it, what was her thoughts about it, what is her feeling about it, because we're born with over 10,000 taste buds. Not just those taste buds on our tongue. We get
Mm-hmm.
stuck there. We've lost a ton of information from our gut brain. So that was my journey, was to start figuring out how to reclaim my own eating boundaries. And therein lies the way I started the process and how I reached out into the world to teach others.
So was that the defining moment where you thought, like, with your daughter, like the aha moment where it was just like you didn't have to um worry about eating?
When I would watch, and I watched with my husband because he had no eating issues. And then I would watch my daughter. I thought, once they're done eating, it's like I'd watch my daughter, and like when she would start to crawl or whatever, she wanted to move out into the world. She didn't want to eat anymore. She wanted to learn and grow and do.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't dragged back into the thoughts about eating or dragged back into any of those thoughts. She just wanted to get out into the world and learn and grow and do. And when she was hungry again, she definitely let me know.
So she expressed it like in a way like how I was talking about when my daughter was little, where she's like, no, mommy, or she kind of like pushed it back, like saying, hey, this isn't working. Like, I don't like this food. So a lot of women carry shame around their weight and eating. That's something that has carried with me. Um, with high school, because like I said, in high school I was nothing but 98 pounds, so I was carrying that all the way a little bit until like in my 20s. I was thin most of my life. um and like by the time, like, maybe I'd say 21, 22, when I met my spouse, is when the eating kind of started, like, in a healthier way. Like, okay, I can eat, I can be myself without just having to worry or feel shame. So was that part of your experience too?
In terms of the shame, we are never meant to be feeling shame about our eating, shame
Mm-hmm.
about our body. Our bodies are our creative souls. We are meant to honor our body and feel our body. And when
Mm-hmm.
we leave the feeling of hunger, when we start listening to what we should eat, when we start listening to what somebody else thinks we should
Mm-hmm.
eat, we leave our own wisdom. And the audience has probably heard about the wisdom of the body. We can
Mm-hmm.
access that wisdom through total and complete choice of all our foods connected to hunger. And this is where people would say, but what about all the research that says this is healthy, this isn't healthy, this is what you
Mm-hmm.
need to do, this is what you need to do, that? And I said, have you ever seen that the research changes? That one day this is good, and then the next time you read something, no, not so good. Or one day it's all fruits and vegetables, and now we're back on the protein kick. I've watched
Mm-hmm.
waves of cutting out certain foods, cutting out certain groups of foods. And the thing is, the research isn't wrong, but what is it studying? It's studying different groups of people. So because we are creative souls, because we are unique individuals, we have our own unique DNA. We have our own unique taste buds. We are the only ones that know if we're hungry or not
Mm-hmm.
hungry. So with that research, it has to keep changing because they keep studying different groups of people. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that particular group of people leaned towards feeling better when they had more protein. This group of people leaned towards wanting more fruits and vegetables. It's all
Mm-hmm.
different. It's all unique. And so we need to come back to our own wisdom, because if I said to you, shrimp is healthy and it has all these nutrients and is good for you, it has protein in it, but let's
Mm-hmm.
say you eat it and you have a reaction, who's the final authority?
That makes
You are.
sense.
Yeah, you are. Health is how you feel. But if you're not with in your own body, how can you tell how you really feel? Yet you go to the doctor and the doctor always says, how do you feel? So I create that process to have the person within their own body to listen to what is right for them. That's true health. It's health at a deeper level because people think, well, you can't just eat what you want. That's not healthy. The trouble is, we've created that because, and this is going to be an interesting concept, you can't want to should, meaning that if somebody tells you you should eat it, now that's their choice. And choice is our identity. So, in order to kind of reclaim ourselves, who we are, we need to do the opposite of what somebody is telling us to do when it comes to food, because food is what sustains our life. That was meant to be ours and ours alone. So, when I say you can't want to should, I take out all the shoulds so you can want healthy food.
That does make sense. And it's one of the most powerful things you teach about we're born with natural eating habits, like eating boundaries, because I notice there's unhealthy boundaries and then there's healthy boundaries with eating. And sometimes it deals with like our emotions attached with the eating. Like sometimes we just want to eat all day. Sometimes we want to eat a little less. Or society has shown like, oh, you could be a size 0 and you could still eat. Or, now society is changing where it's like, oh, well, you're at a healthy weight, which social media can be a little deteriorating because you see a model or you see, like, for example, Kim Kardashian. She went from having a big butt. Now all of a sudden she doesn't have a big butt. And then one minute she's uh, eating tiny, tiny, tiny bits of food. So then everybody thinks, okay, if I eat this tiny, tiny bits of food, it's going to benefit. But when we need to realize is everybody has a different size, shape, color, hair color, eye color. Even our weight fluctuates. Like, for example, my weight fluctuated. And it's something that I wish society would kind of like steer away from, where it's like you can eat healthy and still be happy with your weight versus not being unhappy with your weight. But it's hard because in your brain, like for me, for example, I went from being 98 pounds and I got bigger, throughout my 20s. And then now in my 30s, now it's like reversing. It's like a car just being reversed. So I'm kind of like in shock because after having my kid, I'm like, 176 ain't that bad. It's not that bad, And then going from 176 to 144, I'm kind of like, what? Like, what's happening? So it's a huge shock.
You touched on so many topics. Every time you said something, okay, I need to address that one. I need to address that one.
We can go back.
Yeah. No, the whole size and weight issue, it's like in my process, I never tell them what to eat and I never weigh them because their choice is their choice. Because I don't want to get into you can't, want to, should, because the minute I say something, they need to do the opposite or they might just follow what I eat. And I want to empower my clients. So when you think of size and weight and they say, well, aren't they coming to you to either decrease their weight or increase if it's on the other end of the spectrum? I said, yes, but let me ask you this. In terms of size and weight, if you're not where you want to be in the moment, in this moment, and you're thinking about it, and you don't like where you are in this moment, what does that feel like? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, and you're thinking about your body. So the minute you start thinking size and weight, you want to eat if you don't like yourself, or you step on that scale and that number throws you off, or whatever. So I work at the source of the issue, and go through that when I talk about the hunger scale. But I work at the source of the issue. I need total and complete choice because that's your identity, and you need identity of what sustains your life. Your food. You need to own that. That's no one else's business. You need to feel without judgment what that food feels like to you to know if it's healthy for you. Like I said, it's nutrition at a deeper level. You also need to know if you're hungry or not. So I would say to the audience, I'm going to do this hunger scale first. I did this a little bit with you yesterday. On a scale from 0 to 10, 0 is starved, 10 is stuffed, 5 is a feeling of nothingness. You're not hungry and you're not crowded. The 6 would be a little crowded. 4, you're starting to get a little hungry. 3, a little bit more. And at the 2, your stomach's starting to talk to you. It's starting to growl. It's trying to say, okay, when you have time to sit and eat, feed me. And while you were doing that, if you need to lose the weight, you're getting a little bit hungry. And I always have people get comfortable with hunger. This whole country wants to drug hunger. I want to surface it because it's an important connection to yourself. That's in your gut brain. And I always talk about the gut brain. That was that angst. That angst was my feelings within my gut brain. So on that scale from 0 to 10, if you put your mind in your stomach right now, and I'm going to ask you this, Erica, 0 starved, 10 is stuffed, 5 is a feeling of nothingness, 4 is a little hungrier, 3 a little bit more, 2 your stomach's growling. What number, when you put your mind in your stomach, would you be at in this moment?
I would say a 3.
3. Yep. You're getting to be where your stomach is almost growling. You're almost getting ready to eat. And you knew it like that. It wasn't anything other than awareness that created that understanding of hunger. Everybody can feel it. The thing is, we just stopped listening. So when the audience is listening, if they thought, okay, if I ate when I was just from a 2 to a 5, that's what the infant, they feel that hunger. They're crying. They want to be fed. Then when that feeling goes away, the feeling of nothingness, they want to stop eating.
That makes sense.
Stop. There's your stop. We've overridden that stop with interference, tons and tons of interference. And that, so I would say to the audience, if you would reclaim those boundaries, would you eat less? And if you ate less, would you weigh less? Of course you would. So now we're dealing with size and weight at the very core of the essence of our own eating boundaries. But I've got to put thoughts of size and weight on the shelf because you're not meant to like your storage. We're not meant to have storage. That was for a famine, like I said, and there's not one coming that I have heard of. We're not meant to have storage. You don't have to like your storage, but we do need to be in our body to feel ourselves and respect. So it's more about respecting our body and respecting our messages and that's where I start. That's how I start people learning how to put the eating boundaries back into order.
I like the hunger system because it teaches you, like for example, how I said I'm a 3 right now, and so the 3 right now is just beginning, like you said, me starting to say I'm hungry, but I'm not gonna eat. Just I'm probably gonna eat after this,
Right. Yeah.
but because I think what the reflection is, and we can go back to like the social media of it all, where we see that size 2 and thinking like we have to make that poster on our wall and be like, I have to be this size 2. You don't have to be that size, and you can eat what you want to eat. You just have to eat it in more of a healthier approach, and there are healthier approaches to that. So what would you say to a listener that is probably what we call doom scrolling on social media? I do it myself. I got to stop doing that. Bad habit. Doom scrolling on social media, and they see Kim Kardashian, and they see that she's smaller than what she is. I mean, she got money, so of course it's, you got all these resources. But for those that don't have the money or don't have the resources, to have that healthier approach, what would you say?
You absolutely hit the nail on the head. That scrolling on that social media, I'm constantly saying to my clients, all right, who are you listening now that you left yourself and started paying attention to what somebody else was eating, the quantity somebody else was eating, the look somebody else had? Because the minute you leave your own eating boundaries of hunger and taste, you've lost connection. And it's amazing how much of an impact that is. I always want my clients to come back to themselves. That was the one arena nobody else knew. It's like when my fourth grade, he was in fourth grade, my son came home from school and he said, this lunchroom lady told me something really odd. I said, what did she tell you? He said, she told me I had to finish my food before I went out to play. And I thought, okay, what did you tell her? and and he said, well, I looked at her and he said, well, I'm not hungry anymore. How would you know what my stomach feels like? That's the confidence and the empowerment that no matter what anybody else is saying or doing in the
Mm-hmm.
outside world, you have built in that connection to yourself. And when you started in the conversation right at the beginning here, you said, yeah, I like that. Hunger feels good. And why do you feel
Mm-hmm.
that? Because hunger is a deep connection to ourselves. I can access that connection to self through
Mm-hmm.
total choice of eating connected to hunger, because that was our original eating boundaries. And when you can connect with those boundaries that sustain your life, you're deeply connected to yourself.
It's something that is very, very, I think, hard on society. Where we're so stuck with, back then we didn't have computers. We didn't have the internet to like control like what's going on. And now that we have computers and we have the internet, I saw a quote from this reality TV star. I think her name was Whitney. And she was on this podcast called Call Her Daddy. And she was also on this TV show, like this reality TV show on Hulu. I think it's Secret Wives of Mormon. Listeners, correct me if I'm wrong. Anywho, back to the situation. She was getting so defeated with all these different type of the comments that she was seeing, and the comments were just being so heavy, so detrimental, to the point where it was affecting her mentally, you know. And when it was affecting her mentally, she did a quote where it says, social media is detrimental. I have to find the quote and I'm going to put it into the conversation. But it made me think a lot about social media and how it plays into your mind and your mental well-being. Because sometimes when you do look at another person, you're like, well, gosh, how did she get that size? Or, for me, I'm still in shock that I'm 144. I'm just like, how did I get this size? And so now, after when our conversation last night happened, I stayed up a little bit because I was thinking, and I was like, being 144 is not that bad. I just have to, you got to love yourself back and give that love back. Because, I mean, I was like, dude, I was once 98 pounds. So gaining the weight, your spouse loves it, your daughter loves it. 144 isn't that bad. And it hit me yesterday because I was like, whether I'm 144 or I'm 176 or 200 pounds, I'm still loved the same way. And I'm still going to eat the same way. We're going to still eat the same ways. To the listeners out there, just know that you can come back and love on yourself. Just love on yourself. And that's okay, whether you're a size 0 or a size 176.
What you're saying is absolutely true at the very core of the essence of who we are. We have value. Like when you look at an infant, they have value. And what does the value feel like? No pain. And so that value of self, I'm not saying you have to love your storage. I'm saying let's get to your eating boundaries. I never know where my clients are going to end up. They will feel if it's right for them. There's no magic number. There's no magic place to be. But I know for sure by listening to the eating boundaries, you will end up being where you're meant to be. And what I always say is, I call it storage, the extra fat. That's my term for fat, because storage is stored information. To me, I discovered what the information is in there. There's information because every time you ate when you weren't hungry, you stored some information. And as you start putting eating back in order, that information will start to dissipate from the fat cells. It's just not like butter in the refrigerator. There's feelings in there. There's all kinds of things that are going on. So when you eat when you're not hungry, what else is going on? And this is where we talked about what else is attached to eating. When eating is out of order, it ends up being used when it was never meant to be used. Eating is pleasurable. Well, they say, because people will say to me, but it tastes so good, I can't stop eating. I said, with that information, every time I hear a thought or I hear a sentence, it gives me information as to where the eating is out of order. When it feels difficult to stop at that feeling of nothingness, what that is saying is, I need more pleasure in my life. We were given 4 other pleasure senses. We just had tastes that had very specific boundaries. The other 4 pleasure senses, you can sit and listen to music, sound, you can sit and watch a movie, you can be out in nature, and there isn't a limit there. Taste has very specific limits. There's a certain point where it's enough, and it's very small. When you eat from a 2 to a 5, it's not a lot of food. And so I end up really resurfacing the other pleasure senses, because when you use taste out of order, you bury the other 4 pleasure senses. They don't even surface. They're not even up in the viewpoint or the thoughts of a person. I'll give you an example of a CEO of a company that I worked with. And he got the whole idea of the 2 to 5. He said, Shirley, I understand all that, but 2 o'clock in the afternoon rolls around and nothing matters. I know I'm not hungry. I know I don't need to eat. And I eat. I just eat. I said, exactly. I said, let's just imagine for this moment in time, imagine yourself at 2 o'clock and you know you're not hungry. So let's just say eating doesn't exist in that moment. What would you do? And he looked at me and he said, I feel like I'm sitting in the corner with a dunce cap on because I have no answers. And I'm a CEO of a company. How can that be? And I said, exactly. Because what happens when you rob taste, where it's not meant to be used, you bury the other 4 pleasure senses. You bury your own thoughts and actions because it became above your own thoughts. It became more important than your own thoughts. You had a feeling in your gut and you detoured to eating instead of staying with the feeling in the gut brain. You need to stay. So I said, so now, for now, we've got to brainstorm because your mind is blocked. Your creative soul is blocked. So let's just start imagining what could you possibly do in that moment. And so he said, I feel like I have to get the cobwebs off. I said, that's exactly it, because it stays your thoughts. It stays you're even thinking there's anything else to do. And guess what? You have unlimited things to do. And so he started thinking, he said, oh, I could just look out the window, I suppose, or I could, they have these little stones where you just have that repetitive motion because that's what's calming. You got to understand what for you. It's a repetitive motion you know how to do. It feels pleasant. That's easy. So he said I could just rub those little stones and process, or I could give somebody a call, or I could walk down the hall. And I said, now it's starting to flow. Now you got situation after situation. But I'm telling you, in the beginning, it will never feel as good as eating, because the eating was out of order, because eating is intensely pleasure that goes to every cell of your body. So once it's out of order, there's the work that I do for people to help get it back in order and surface the creative mind, surface the abundance of pleasure. So mine is more pleasure-based, abundance-based, as the storage just dissipates on its own.
I like that. I like that you gave that example of the CEO, because he was probably in shock, like, what? And I was kind of in shock when I heard it. I was like, it's interesting. So can you repeat the 4 pleasurables for the listeners so that way they know what they are?
Sure. So you have sound. And so think about all the different things with sound. You have sight, all the different things that you can look at. You have smell. Think about all the different senses, everything. And they call it music therapy, or, there's all kinds of therapy with the pleasure senses, but we have access to them every moment of every day. And the other one, touch. So you have touch.
Okay.
You have all kinds of touch with your hands, touch with your feet. So that's why when you understand what the eating out of order is doing for you, then you start to replace it. So walking, touch of your feet to the ground, a repetitive motion you know how to do. Sight, sound, you're smell, you're engaging all of your pleasure senses, plus you're looking around, thinking, whatever. And it ends up replacing then what eating had been doing for you. But like I said, it is the most intense thing you can do. That's why when you start eating out of order, it covers over everything. So as we put it back, I start surfacing, and I have people write down what pleasure sense can you use, what worked, what action step, thoughts and actions, what worked. And so when they get to that moment when they want to eat, they've got to see that concretely. Otherwise, that mind just gets fuzzy, and all they can think about is eating. And if you're trying not to eat, that doesn't work, because you're already on the detour to eating. You got to shift.
Yes, when you try not to eat and that hunger comes, you become a whole different person.
Yes.
Okay, because for me, when that happens, I'm like, I'm hangry.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not hungry.
What you said, I become a whole, that was because I listen very closely to your words, and when you
Yeah.
say something, I'm going to explain that. You say, I become a whole different person because it's like when eating takes over, it's like there's another person out there pulling you. It's like I had
Hmm.
a client that she said, I get this now. She said, I was lying on my couch thinking, okay, what could I do? What could I do? I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. She said, the minute I thought about eating, I went up 2 flights of stairs and into that refrigerator.
I mean,
It
you
pulls you.
should,
It,
it pulls you.
yeah,
It
it
pulls you.
pulls you.
You become hangry.
Yep, it
I'm
became
hungry.
more powerful than your own thoughts and actions. So,
Yeah, because you know that Snicker commercial where it
yeah,
says you're not you when you're hungry.
yeah,
That's what I look like.
yep.
That's what I.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So I unpack all that so that you put eating back in order, so that now you handle life with your own thoughts and actions. You handle life with the other pleasure senses. All of a sudden, life becomes more rich. It becomes more real. There's clarity. So
Hmm.
the clients I work with, they become more confident that they can handle the discomfort, which eventually turns into messages from the gut brain.
I love this conversation. Well, before we wrap up in this conversation today, what is something that you want to leave the listeners behind with?
Everybody can get this. If they want to work with me, they can. If they want to go on my Instagram, follow me. I always get little bits and pieces of information, and I also give away my book that I wrote way back in '91. And I don't have all the tools in there, but the foundation is the same, and they can download it for free coming onto my website. But I can give like
Mm.
2 or 3 little tips to start with. And they
Mhm.
all, oh, I forgot, they can also, if they want to learn more about what I do, can sign up for a free consultation. I really want people to know that everybody can get this because we were all infants at one point in time. I just take out the interference so their natural eating boundaries can surface.
Well, thank you for that. And you said you're on Instagram. So what is your Instagram? What is all your socials?
It's Energetics Method. Energetics Method is my Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
My Facebook is energetics.learn. My website is energetics, but I almost have to spell it because when people hear it, they think
Mm-hmm.
IN. It's INNER. Energetics. It's energy, your own energy from within out.
I like that. Well, you guys, you heard her. Y'all need to go follow her, as I always say to my guests. But I've enjoyed this conversation so much, Shirley. Um, for my listeners, keep liking these YouTubes, keep liking the Instagrams. You know where to follow me, the Balanced Boss Mom podcast. Of course, tell me what you think about this episode. Again, my name is Erica. And Shirley, thank you so much for coming on to this episode of the Balanced Boss Mom podcast. And everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, guys.
I know. Thanks, Erica.
You're welcome. Bye.